This is Radio Now 95.3 FM.
The International Court of Justice has just delivered its ruling on the provisional measures requested by South Africa in its genocide accusations against Israel. South Africa first presented its case to the court, where it accused Israel of genocidal conduct over Israel's methods of driving its campaign in Gaza, which is home to about 2 million Palestinians. Why is this particular accusation important? Well, let's go back a bit. To see the way forward, sometimes you have to take a step back. Let's go back to the beginning of how genocide came to be coined. Now, in the fallout of the Second World War, fallout of World War II, and the murder by Nazi Germany at that time of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, the entire world was shocked. The world got together in that shock and took a pledge, basically, that this sort of thing must never happen again. It must never happen again. Now, the result of that stance was the drafting of a convention which codified, that's set out in a series of laws, and also committed nations to prevent and punish what was then a new crime, genocide. Now, the convention was drawn up in 1948, the very same year of Israel's creation as a Jewish state. Today, 76 years later, Israel stands accused at the United Nations highest court, that's the ICJ. Israel stands accused at the ICJ of committing the very crime that is so deeply, deeply etched in its national identity. Now, presenting its case against Israel on the 11th of January this year, South Africa requested the following provisional measures while the determination of genocide conduct was ongoing. South Africa demanded that, one, the court order Israel to suspend its military operations in and against Gaza, that the Israeli military organizations do not escalate military operations any further. They demanded that Israel allow access to adequate food, water, fuel, shelter, hygiene, and sanitation into Gaza. And they also say Israel should prevent the destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza. South Africa also, as part of their emergency measures then, said Israel should not destroy evidence relevant to South Africa's genocide allegations against it, nor deny international organizations such as fact-finding missions access to Gaza to help preserve this evidence. That's what they said. Those are the emergency measures, immediate measures they requested at that time. Well, in its ruling today, the ICJ, that's the International Court of Justice, said, among other things, that Israel must take steps to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza, but they stopped short of ordering a ceasefire. In their ruling, the judges have not ruled out the merits of the genocide allegations, which some say may take a while to prove. But the court has also given Israel 1 month from the date of today's ruling to provide the court with evidence of compliance with those provisional measures that South Africa asked for. Now, the question is, could the court have done more? Is this enough? Welcome to the big story. Now, joining me for the discussion today is the leader of the Palestinian community in Nigeria, Mr. Ramzi Abu Ibrahim. Ramzi, good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening. How are you? Good evening. Thank you for having me today with you.
Thank you. And also joining us is Barrister Justice Ojieno. He's a legal practitioner and has been following the situation to help shed light on, what this legal angle is and what could have been done. Justice, good evening and welcome.
It's my pleasure joining you. Good evening, and good evening to our listeners all across the world.
Okay, so here we are. The first awaited date has come. The justices have found in favor of the emergency measures called by South Africa, the measures I've listed out. I'm going to go straight to Ramzi now. Ramzi, what are your thoughts on the ICJ's ruling today?
Well, all the Palestinians inside Palestine of Gaza and West Bank and inside the controlled territory by so-called occupation, so-called Israel, and others outside countries, they were looking at ceasefire immediately from the court. But what we have today, I think it's first step of carrying the occupation government and army to the Court of Justice to stand, and for the first time in the history of Israel, to stand on the international body and international court as to be questionnaire and to be asking for more details of the genocide running every day on our families in Gaza.
Okay,
so we
go ahead.
We wish that the court should have asked for immediate ceasefire today. That is our wishes, but we thank God of what they have given us today. It's a step forward anyway.
Okay, we'll come back and visit that. Let me come now to justice. From a legal perspective, this is the International Court, so they have taken a position. They've even given a time. Let's start with where Ramsey left off. They clearly have the power to order a ceasefire, but they have not. How do you read that in the scheme of international justice and all the politics and whatnot's going on? What are your thoughts on that? Have they done enough?
Okay, for me, I think that we must also see it from the context of what was the court requested to do. I think that South Africa stopped short of asking for a ceasefire. A court is supposed to not be swayed by whatever is said outside of the court, but by the prayers that are presented before it. South Africa didn't ask for a ceasefire. South Africa merely asked for practically all the prayers that were granted. I was very scared. I was thinking that the court would decline it on a technicality, but I see that this court is very, very bold and brave to have even been able to make these declarations. And I must also say, in fact, not even declarations, by granting some of the orders, I must also say that we must, in the spirit of educating the larger populace, we must let the people know that it is an interim decision of the court. The court has not concluded on whatever it is that South Africa is asking for. The court is just saying some of the prima facie requirements have been met before we go into whether Israel actually committed these genocides or not. We are asking Israel to take these steps in order to prevent the wanton further loss of life, property, and limb.
Okay, now the thing is, the entire world is calling for a ceasefire, and part of the conditions that South Africa listed was prevent further loss of life to Gaza. Now we've seen what's happened over the last couple of days. The numbers are just simply climbing. So one would think if the courts truly wanted to uphold that position of preventing further loss of life in that area, a ceasefire is a logical thing to do, to say, all right, for now, stop everything. Everybody just stop. In the name of preserving life.
Okay, Cameron, if I may just butt in
yes, go on.
With this. The court too is trying to guard its power. It's a general thing with courts. Courts are jealous with their powers, and courts, they are usually careful in order to give orders that will be hard to enforce or will be practically impossible to enforce. The court is maybe also looking at it from and you can also see it from the generality of the unanimity of the decisions of the court. Largely, it's supposed to be 7 judges, one of them was absent, and practically it's usually a decision of 15-2, 16-1. So it shows a lot of unanimity. And in order to be able to not get a split decision of maybe 10-5 or 10-7 or 9-8, you usually have to come sometimes to the middle ground, because if you find yourself in a situation where it's practically split or it's almost split, you will still see people saying that, it's because the judges decided on an emotional basis. So that's why the judge...
Sorry to interrupt you there. Sorry to interrupt, Justin. I'm going to take you back again based on what you've just said. Let us look at the legal position of the court, its powers, and how to try to deliver what it turns to be justice. Again, part of the requirements, one of the things that was granted was that Israel prevents the destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza. How do you do that without ordering a ceasefire? Because now hostilities are going on. How is that going to be possible?
If they are ordered for a ceasefire, and that's why I was talking about the way the court guards its powers, I think that it would have been met with disobedience. And we must note that the International Court of Justice is not like every court in a particular country where you have the executive powers to march in immediately to enforce the decisions of the court. So it means that the United States Security Council has to now sit and probably decide. And of course, we know the Security Council and we know the big brotherly role, outsized role that the United States has been playing so far when it comes to matters of Israel. They are most likely, if it had been decided as a ceasefire, I see the U.S. putting in their veto power to prevent an enforcement. And enforcement is everything that actually makes the decision of a court even what the paper that it is written on.
Okay, so Justice, sorry to interrupt again. We'll come back to enforcement in a second. I just want to take it back to Ramsey now. Now, you said it's at least a step. It's, if I don't want to say a first step, but what does it mean for people in Gaza tonight? How will they sleep? Will they sleep safer, or what will happen to them?
There is no way safer in Gaza, in the whole of Gaza. Yesterday, Israel killed 150. Today, Israel killed 150. Every day is killing. There is no even 1 hour of save. Even the area where they ask them to move in, they start targeting it. From Khan Yunus to Rafah, from Rafah to Gaza. Yesterday, the people went around to collect aid which is coming to as a food. As soon they went to the trucks, they start targeting them, and they kill more than 25 people. So even when the court asks Israel to provide 1 or 2 things and they give them 1 month, I really doubt Israel is going to comply with the court. Israel will not comply. Israel did not open the border for the National Security Council General. Israel want to comply with really it's bitter to speak about this subject.
It is indeed.
Because the whole West is backing Israel with the vetoes. Even I was looking at today's judgment. Maybe the court refused to give the immediate ceasefire, because they were afraid if it goes like that, Israel will not comply. America will put veto on it, and that's all, and nothing will happen. Shade and genocide and killing continue every day on a different name and in a different excuse. I want to understand, an occupant of a land, does it have right to be killing children and mothers and old men and targeting civilian houses? That is the question I want to know. What is the meaning of genocide? The whole world is seeing what is the genocide been to the Gaza people since 111 days. And nobody is waking up to say it is a real genocide. Anyway, we pray God to stop this war.
I mean, let's come back to Justice now. Now, Justice, I'll take up where you left off, which is enforcement, the issue of enforcement. Now, courts in various jurisdictions across the world have enforcers of their judgments, law enforcement agencies and so on and so forth. That's how it works. Who are the enforcers for the ICJ?
Okay, largely it's supposed to be the United Nations Security Council. And of course, we know how that works. There are people voted into the Security Council on and off basis, and there are 5 permanent Security Council members. So it is not exactly about the other persons that are elected from time to time. It is more of the 5. and we almost can predict with surgical precision how votes will go. We are seeing it that maybe with this decision of the ICJ, the Biden administration may be forced to at least vote, put in an abstention rather than a veto. And if an abstention is put in, it means that the Permanent Security Council member is practically saying, just consider me absent and vote however you wish to vote. But I don't know whether the US, and of course we know that wherever the US goes, the UK also goes, whether they will be able to lodge in their abstentions. But again, we must remember that all politics are local, and a lot of, especially the political class, both on the Democratic side and on the Republican side in the US, they are largely behind the Israelis, and that's a big challenge. I know of an American legislator, especially at the House of Reps level. I think a lady from Minnesota or Michigan that was actually silenced, was voted to be proscribed. She can't talk. And of course, we also know the other lady from Minnesota too that has been put down. She has even been proscribed before this war. We saw that as a result of this war, the lady too from Michigan too was proscribed. So that really goes to show the level that the political class, both Democratic and Republicans, where they are. And once they tell their president or their representative at the UNSC that this is the way to go, they will most likely go that way. But we know that the Democrats, especially the voters, the ones in the schools, in the universities, and the people in the Middle Ages, they are largely behind the Palestinians. And we know that to a large extent, so that can force the political class, especially the Democrats and President Joe Biden, who will be seeking another term later in November this year, to actually have a rethink and probably put in an abstention that will be able to let every other Security Council member be able to vote for Israel to actually put in the ceasefire in place, so that at least we'll reduce drastically the loss of innocent life and limb. I am not for Hamas. I'm fully against whatever it is that Hamas did. But as a lawyer and as a minister in the Temple of Justice, I will always fall on the side of human rights. I don't want any human being that is innocent to die. But the warring factions, the soldiers on both sides, the fighters on both sides, they can choose to fight themselves and kill themselves to a hilt. But I am also against using human beings, whether women, children, or elderly people, as human shields. So whatever it is that has to be done for the loss or drastic reduction in the loss of innocent lives to be put in place, those should be put in place, and should be put in place with alacrity and with appropriate enforcement.
Okay, let me come back now to Ramsey. The whole world has basically turned its attention in very large numbers, perhaps for the first time in our recent history, to the Middle East. To many people, it has always just been a phrase, oh, there's a Middle East situation. But I think for the first time in our recent history, people are starting to take note of what's going on, what the historical antecedents are, and so on and so forth. As a Palestinian, how impactful would you say your efforts are towards a political solution to this problem, especially in light of what Justice has said? He's given a political tinge to the way things are going by the powers that be. Let me use that phrase. How impactful
is a simple...
Yes.
It's a simple answer, brother. We are under occupation. We need our freedom. Simple.
That's very, very clearly put. So in light of this, I'm going to come back to you now, Justice, and take you back to one thing you said. You said you find the judgment of the ICJ, you said they are brave.
But before you go to the justice,
yes,
I just want to mention another issue.
Go ahead.
The whole world since 111 days are asking for hostages or for captures of Israelis who are carrying dual nationalities and claiming to have their people under the capture of whoever Palestinian captured them. Because it's not only Hamas is capturing the Israelis. There is other groups of Palestinians who are freedom fighters also are capturing. So the whole world came down and started shouting and crying for 136 or 33 remaining in Gaza, if they are still alive or dead, from the targeting of the Israelis' Air Force strike. Now, we have 8,000 or 9,000 Palestinian prisoners under Israel occupation prison, political prisoners. Some of them are under 40 years under the prison. Some of them are sick with different kind of diseases, whether cancer or other diseases. Nobody in the whole world is talking about them. Everybody wants to free the Israelis. What if the Palestinians are the victims of 75 or 76 years of occupation of Israel? Can you answer this question to me? Thank you.
Okay, Justice. As a human rights advocate, as you say, how do you respond to the, extended incarceration of what Ramsey calls political prisoners? How do we resolve that issue under the current circumstances?
Okay, for me, I think it's a very, very difficult question to answer, because they may feel that they have the right reasons for them to be captured. So
why they have the right? He's an occupied. How can he have a right? You know the law, the international law.
Okay, Mr.
How can he have a right?
No, Mr. Ramsey.
How can he have a right, an occupant, of having a prisoner under his occupation?
Okay, Ramsey, let him respond, please. Go on.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Ramsey, you talked about 8,000 to 9,000 prisoners. So that is different from the complete occupation of the whole of Gaza that exceeds 2 million people. Of course, I won't be in support of that. Mind you, even the West Bank, since 111 days, every day there is a prisoners by Israelis. We are not talking of Gaza alone. We are talking of West Bank also. West Bank is every day attacking the cities and killing every person and bombarding houses and destroying also. We are not talking of Gaza alone.
Okay,
we have to put light on what is going on in the West Bank also.
Okay, Mr. Ramsey, I personally highly understand your pains. I know that it hits very, very close to home for you, but I'm not in exactly the same situation. So I'm very, very sorry if I'm not sounding as emotional.
Thank you very much, but I need you to put light.
Definitely, we are doing that in our own ways.
From the lower background.
Yes, we are doing that in our own ways. And for me, as much as possible, I will never, ever be a party to blanket rounding up of prisoners. It is understandable if people are prisoners of war. If they are prisoners of war, then under international law, they must be treated as prisoners of war. They are entitled to certain rights, and Israel or whatever country that is taking international prisoners of war, there are minimum standards that must be met. And I'm very, very happy that the ICJ in this case was bold enough to give a timeline for when its orders will be followed up. Reports of its orders will be met or looked into, and how frequently that should be. I'm happy that is being done, and I pray that opportunity is taken for the whole world, whether think tanks, whether international organizations, or members of even the UN itself, to go and actually see how also prisoners of war are being catered for.
Okay, so Justice, because of time, pardon the interruption. What if Israel does not comply as the court has ruled? What options are open to the court then?
And that's why I've been talking about enforcement before. It becomes very, very unfortunate. We must always remember that judiciary, in almost all crimes, is if there is even a three-arm of government, the judiciary is the toothless third brother. It is enforcement that actually makes the judiciary effective. Sometimes I've seen situations where even in Nigeria, a judge threatened recently that if his own orders are not being carried out, he's going to resign and leave the job, because it means that he actually doesn't. There is no basis for him working. So if the enforcement is not being carried out, I'm sorry, then the International Court of Justice has successfully made itself academic, and I very well know that it is one of the reasons why it fell short of going the entire haul in order for it not to be academic. But again, let's see how this goes, especially how the United States votes by the time that the judgment is submitted for enforcement at the United Nations Security Council.
Okay, Ramsey, your closing remarks on this matter. The road ahead is uncertain. A step has been taken, albeit not as effective as we would have liked. But your closing remarks so far.
Just to give a big thank to Africa and big thank to South Africa, government and nation, of the stand behind the freedom of the Palestinians. Thank you very much for having me. Wish you to have you more again.
Thank you, Ramsey. And Justice, your closing remarks?
Okay, for me, I just feel that I'm very, very happy with the way it all went. It's my prayer that Israel, they abide by the orders of the International Court of Justice, because again, it is in the best interest of the nations of the world for there to be a one world order where a state doesn't start going in separate ways. It is the one reason why the UN was put in place in the first place, and it is the one reason why the International Court of Justice is put in place, to be the final arbiter of the definition of right or wrongs when states are having misgivings.
Okay, thank you so much to my guests, Justice Ojeno, a legal practitioner and who's been closely following this case. Thank you so much. And our hearts go out as well to the innocent lives who are being taken in the Gaza Strip. It's not easy as a news person covering this thing on a daily basis, I tell you. So imagine what it's like for the families there, people like Ramsey who are over here. But thank you so much to Mr. Ramsey Abu Ibrahim. He's the leader of the Palestinian community here in Nigeria. Thank you both so much, gentlemen.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM.